Long before stepping into the boots of Marion Ravenwood to punch out Nazis, outdrink Sherpas at the bar, and exchange witty banter with Indy, this talented actress had already been climbing the ranks of stardom. Transitioning from a university dropout into a beloved cult figure, she paved her own unique lane without relying on a desperate thirst for celebrity, but rather by delivering incredibly authentic and mesmerizing acting that permanently marked viewers who recognized her rare gift. However, following a whole series of legendary characters throughout the 1980s, this incredible talent slowly faded away from public view, leaving us all wondering what exactly went down. In this episode, we will dive deep into her initial success, her most unforgettable parts, and exactly what she has been up to since the major studios quit blowing up her phone, so let us take it back to the beginning. Born in Carrollton, Illinois, on October 5th, 1951, the young Karen Allen certainly did not remain in her hometown for very long. Thanks to her dad's career with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the household relocated constantly before finally planting roots in Washington, District of Columbia. Growing up, she viewed herself as a highly observant and silent kid who was perpetually lost in a book or closely monitoring her surroundings. The art of acting lured her in, though she never really cared about the fame aspect, instead falling in love with the magic of completely stepping into another person's shoes. After signing up for classes at the University of Maryland, she quit during the early 1970s to roam the nation, taking on random gigs and hitchhiking while absorbing valuable life lessons, which eventually led her straight to the Big Apple to train at the prestigious Lee Strasberg Theatre and Film Institute. Everything simply made sense once she arrived there. With her incredibly organic acting style, very down-to-earth vibe, and piercing gaze, she easily separated herself from the pack, proving that not fitting the standard industry mold was actually her greatest asset. Way before conquering the silver screen, she cut her teeth on stage during the late 1970s by acting in quite a few avant-garde plays. The pure sincerity and raw vulnerability she displayed on those wooden boards transferred flawlessly to the camera. Although deeply influenced by the method technique, Allen always injected a soft, understated emotional brilliance into her performances, ensuring that every single fictional persona felt completely real. Becoming a massive celebrity was never her goal, because all she cared about was discovering the ultimate truth of a scene. Luckily, that intense dedication would eventually score her apart in one of the most legendary pop culture smashes of all time. Making her massive theatrical entrance in 1978, the actress popped up in National Lampoon's Animal House, an incredibly chaotic, booze-fueled masterpiece that quickly transformed into a monumental piece of cinema history. While the rest of the flick was bursting with completely over-the-top antics and wacky caricatures, her portrayal of Katie provided a breath of fresh authenticity. Taking on the role of Boone's highly intelligent and rational partner, she perfectly captured the struggle of being stuck right between collegiate insanity and real-world maturity. Any lesser performer might have faded completely into the scenery, yet her sheer elegance and nuanced delivery lent an undeniable gravity to the young woman. That college romp shattered box office records to become an absolute comedic juggernaut. And even though she was not the main focus, her screen time was utterly unforgettable. However, the real turning point arrived in 1981, cementing her legacy as an absolute cinematic icon. Director Steven Spielberg tapped her to play Marion Ravenwood in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and right from her very first frame of tossing back liquor inside a hazy tavern in Nepal, she completely shattered the typical damsel in distress trope to deliver an absolute masterclass in acting. Marion brought massive laughs, intense rage, delicate vulnerability, and pure toughness to the table. Escaping the trap of a boring cliché thanks to Allen's brilliant chops, she also managed to generate off-the-charts on-screen chemistry right alongside Harrison Ford. Their dynamic was an incredible mix of undeniable romantic tension and pure mutual annoyance. Instead of just acting as a simple sidekick to Indiana Jones, she constantly pushed back against him, which absolutely thrilled moviegoers across the globe. Raking in well over $300 million, the motion picture was an earth-shattering triumph that completely changed the landscape for all future action-adventure stories. Practically overnight, the talented star had evolved into an incredibly famous household commodity. However, following that massive archaeological blockbuster, she purposely avoided diving straight into the massive Hollywood machine. Although most folks would use that momentum to secure endless high-budget gigs, she stayed incredibly selective, chasing parts that truly fascinated her instead of just grabbing quick paychecks. Because of this mindset, Her subsequent movies rarely dominated the front pages of entertainment magazines, yet they clearly established the true nature of her artistic journey. Fame was never the end goal, as she exclusively hunted down deeply complex characters. Coming off that legendary adventure with the Ark, she literally held the keys to the entire entertainment industry. Instead of hunting down another massive franchise, or locking herself into gigantic studio contracts, she looked inward, dedicating her time to passion projects that totally ignored financial safety nets. Taking a leap in 1984, she shared the screen with Jeff Bridges for John Carpenter's Starman, an incredibly moving science fiction romance focusing on an extraterrestrial being who mimics the physical form of a grieving widow's late spouse. Delivering a profoundly touching performance, she injected massive amounts of soul into the project. Playing the devastated Jenny Hayden, she absolutely refused to let the character be defined solely by her mourning. Instead, she portrayed someone navigating immense grief, pure astonishment, and terrifying mysteries simultaneously. Projecting immense grace and tragic sorrow, she anchored the weirdest sci-fi concepts of the script with breathtaking human realism. Reviewers absolutely adored her execution, and even though the sci-fi flick failed to dominate theaters upon release, it steadily grew into a wildly popular underground classic that features her absolute best dramatic acting. Fast forward a couple of years, and she jumped back into comedy with spectacular results. Taking on the 1988 holiday classic Scrooged, a wildly sarcastic update to A Christmas Carol, she completely shined as Claire Phillips, the incredibly sweet former flame of Bill Murray's terribly bitter television producer. Providing a massive dose of genuine kindness, she beautifully counterbalanced the otherwise mean-spirited jokes of the picture. Much like her time-dodging boulders, she once again functioned as the true moral anchor for the entire narrative. Even though the actress stepped away from starring in gigantic tentpole productions during this particular decade, she kept a solid schedule by popping up in deeply personal indie dramas and quirky comedic pieces that truly tested her boundaries. Projects such as Until September in 1984, along with The Glass Menagerie in 1987, heavily highlighted her phenomenal theatre background and formal education. However, as the late 1980s rolled around, the general public started seeing her moniker far less often in major publications. As society grew wildly addicted to trashy tabloids and toxic gossip columns, her peaceful step back from the limelight tricked many folks into thinking she had completely fallen off the map. Of course, she never actually went anywhere. The truth is, she simply decided to quit running the Hollywood rat race. Refusing to measure success by paparazzi photos, she lived with pure purpose and was getting ready to totally reinvent herself for a second time. Heading into the 1990s, this powerhouse performer intentionally chose to severely limit her cinematic commitments. It was never a fiery, bridge-burning moment, nor was it caused by some crazy controversy, a string of terrible flops, or a loss of talent. The reality was significantly more basic than any of that. After welcoming her baby boy Nicholas into the world in 1990, her entire perspective completely flipped, and she craved a totally different existence. Speaking candidly with reporters, she made it very clear that she refused to be an absentee mother who abandoned her kid for massive stretches of time, opting against a parenting style, relying strictly on long-distance chats and brief weekend hotel stays. Consequently, she packed up and relocated to the Berkshires out in western Massachusetts, successfully escaping the madness of both coasts to fully concentrate on raising her son. That being said, she never officially retired from the craft. While she definitely popped up in the occasional television special or small-budget indie flick, she actively rejected massive blockbusters that required extensive travel away from her family. Every single gig she booked during this era, whether it was The Turning in 1992 or In the Bedroom in 2001, was selected with extreme caution. Furthermore, she headed right back to the theatre, securing a far more manageable routine while performing in a beautifully intimate and grounded setting. Escaping to the East Coast was far more than just a change of scenery. It was a total shift in her worldview. Launching her very own fabric business, Karen Allen Fiber Arts, straight out of Great Barrington, Massachusetts, she began creating and selling her custom-knit clothing line. This fresh endeavor was incredibly hands-on, beautifully unhurried, and wildly fulfilling for her soul. It was a million miles away from the insanely publicized universe of flashy movie premieres and aggressive paparazzi. She often viewed her clothing designs as simply another method of narrative expression, complete with a completely unique pacing and emotional payoff. Even though this incredibly peaceful era of her journey failed to generate massive press coverage, it handed her the ultimate prize of total independence. While the brutal entertainment business is famous for chewing actors up and spitting them right back out, she just calmly exited the building. Best of all, she harbored exactly zero resentment toward the business, dedicating her days to teaching, crafting, and nurturing her boy far away from the toxic hustle. She proved to all those confused fans that she had actually been thriving the entire time. Her priorities had just simply evolved. However, in 2008, nearly 30 years after originally decking the world's most famous archaeologist, she mounted a spectacular comeback by starring in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. For all the die-hard supporters of those classic films, watching her step back into that iconic role was undeniably the most thrilling and nostalgic highlight of the entire movie. Seeing Marion Ravenwood back on screen was incredible, radiating that same fierce and hilarious energy from the classic days. The years clearly had not slowed her down one bit. Karen's comeback earned massive applause from critics and fans alike. She injected genuine heart and serious weight into a movie that often relied way too much on pure visual effects. Her presence transformed Crystal Skull into a legitimate next chapter, rather than a cheap nostalgic cash grab. Both the character of Marion and Karen herself had grown immensely. Gone were the days of her being just another romantic interest for the famous archaeologist. Now she stood as the mother of his son, perfectly anchoring his older and reckless swagger. The chemistry between them blossomed into a deeply rooted and affectionate bond, providing the entire blockbuster with a profoundly necessary emotional core. During the press tour for the release, Karen mentioned the wild and dreamlike experience of returning to the exact part that put her on the map. She expressed immense gratitude for the chance to play Marion again, this time as a fully realized and complex woman. The goal was never to simply copy what they did decades ago. Instead, it was all about paying respect to their history while pushing the narrative into uncharted territory. For the fresh generation of moviegoers who completely missed out on the original Raiders phenomenon, this film served as a masterclass in Karen Allen's absolute cinematic magic. She effortlessly mixed raw toughness with deep sincerity, undeniable charisma, and unwavering morals. Coming back to the franchise was definitely not a desperate attempt to restart her acting journey. She had zero intention of diving back into the chaotic Los Angeles grind, but she definitely left us with a powerful message. This actress was far more than just a pretty face from an 80s action flick. She completely embodied Marion Ravenwood, delivering a legendary performance that absolutely no one else could ever replicate. Following her massive blockbuster comeback, the star entirely ignored the typical urge to claw her way back to the top of the Hollywood food chain. She refused to chase down huge studio gigs or milk her revived fame for a massive paycheck. Staying true to her own vibe, she simply went right back to pursuing deeply personal indie gigs fueled by pure artistic passion. Throughout the 2010s, she graced the screen in several under-the-radar gems, such as White Irish Drinkers in 2010, Year by the Sea in 2016, and Colwell in 2019. That last project was a beautifully slow-paced drama centering around a small-town postal worker dealing with unwanted job loss, which ended up scoring her some of the highest critical praise she had ever seen. Karen delivered a profoundly thoughtful and stunningly authentic performance on screen. It firmly proved that playing things close to the chest with quiet wisdom hits just as hard, if not harder, than explosive and high-profile acting gigs. Beyond the camera, she kept her theatrical roots alive by taking on roles under the stage lights and in the director's chair. Back in 2012, she actually directed her very first play, tackling Frankie and Johnny in the Clair de Lune for the Berkshire Theatre Group. That fierce love for live theatre, planted during her earliest days of studying the craft, served as her ultimate artistic sanctuary. The legendary actress even took up teaching, passing down decades of directing and performance wisdom to a brand new wave of eager students. She adopted a wonderfully practical and deeply intentional teaching style, completely tossing aside the obsession with celebrity status to focus strictly on the raw art of spinning a good yarn. Whenever reporters ask about her teaching gig, she beams about the absolute joy of guiding rookie creatives as they stumble upon their own unique artistic identities. Meanwhile, she has stayed firmly planted in Massachusetts, successfully operating her very own custom knitwear shop called Karen Allen Fiber Arts. This spot is absolutely not some trendy celebrity vanity project. It represents a deeply held personal passion and totally mirrors her grounded philosophy on life. She believes in getting your hands dirty, crafting tangible goods, and pouring your absolute soul into the work. While Karen's recent decades might lack flashy tabloid coverage or massive franchise leads, she has meticulously woven together a beautiful legacy, overflowing with depth, grit, and incredible devotion. Going completely against the grain of typical Tinseltown expectations allowed her the ultimate freedom to grow profoundly, both as an elite creative and as a human being. Fast forward to 2023, she popped up for a fantastic cameo in Dial of Destiny, delivering a beautiful and tear-jerking finale to the epic romance between Indy and Marion. That remarkably subtle and moving scene proved to everyone in the theater that she was always the secret source holding the saga together. Chasing viral trends or cheap publicity was never this legend's style. She preferred to simply hit her marks, drop absolutely jaw-dropping performances, and let the undeniable quality of her art do all the heavy lifting. From completely hijacking massive popcorn flicks to delivering quiet brilliance in tiny independent pictures, she always brought an unbelievably rare magic to the table. We are talking about pure, unadulterated grit, sharp wit, and a whole lot of soul. She carved out an incredibly unique path, ditching the brutal Los Angeles machine the second it felt wrong, and finding pure joy in the art that truly mattered to her. Catch my brand new deep dives dropping right here every Tuesday and Saturday. If this trip down memory lane gave you all the good feels, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me which iconic star I should cover next. Thanks a million for hanging out with me today, and I absolutely cannot wait to catch you in the next episode.